Plopsaland to Panne is a pretty remote amusement park located in Panne, Belgium, right by the French border. It's a park designated for a family audience, which explains why most rides and roller coasters here are not very intense. But the park has recently made headlines for debuting the Ride to Happiness, which shows that they aren't afraid to step outside the box and try something a bit different. So in today's video, let's take each of their 7 roller coasters and stack them up against each other. How you order these rides is already quite obvious if you're a coaster enthusiast, so consider this video to be targeted more towards the general public or just a short review of each attraction I personally got to experience at Plopsaland. Starting off this list at number 7 is K3 Roller Skater. This is a Vekoma Junior coaster, pretty classic ride model, but it has a horrible capacity. If you're a coaster enthusiast and you're visiting this park for the first time, you'll probably be tempted to go straight to Ride to Happiness when the park opens, but I promise, if you count credits and don't do this first, there's a very good chance you will not be riding it. I for one had to wait almost an hour for this stupid thing because the line moves so astronomically slow. The ride itself is fine, but not the kind of thing I'm into, especially since I'd already ridden many roller skater models at other amusement parks before this one. At number 6 is a bit of a step up. This one is #LikeMe Coaster. This Zero Tivoli coaster is a decent ride overall, but it has a name history that's even more impressive in my opinion. Like, what kind of name is #LikeMe Coaster? The ride has basically undergone 4 different names since it opened in 1976, and when I saw this on the roller coaster database as #LikeMe Coaster, I was so confused. Now apparently there's a TV show in Belgium called #LikeMe or something like that, so it makes much more sense now, but if you didn't know that ahead of time, you'd probably be just as confused as I was. At number 5 is Super Splash, which roller coaster database does not actually qualify as a roller coaster, but look at it and tell me how this isn't a coaster, but this is. That literally makes no sense. Plus the coaster count app that I use to mark my credits does provide Super Splash as an option, which kind of solidified my opinion that this does count as a water coaster. But I have to say, what an underwhelming water coaster it was. You start with the promising indoor spiral elevator lift hill, which is a very unique element. But then as I'm expecting some cool dark ride scene like all the other water rides we've done in Europe, the doors enter and then you drop into the water. That's the entire ride. I would have been so disappointed if our local friend Jonas hadn't told us about the ride experience beforehand. We had waited about an hour to get on this thing and it was not worth it. That's why I've decided to place Drock one spot higher at number 4. This is a Mock Rides powered coaster, so a pretty tame ride for sure, but as I've been saying in recent videos, powered coasters have grown on me throughout my trip in Europe. Yeah, they might not do a whole lot, but it's still really fun gliding around the park, especially when the track transitions are a little messed up and give brief pops of airtime or laterals. But Drock was also a beautifully presented attraction with its own music score, visually impressive trains, and beautiful architecture making up the station and the queue line. The top 3 at this park is really where the list begins, because at number 3 we have Heidi the Ride. Themed to one of Studio 100's main characters named Heidi, which is the company that owns this park and many others in the area, this ride does have its fair share of theming after the final brake run. But even more impressive, its layout packs a very solid punch overall. Heidi the Ride is almost an exact replica of White Lightning at Fun Spot America Orlando, with the only difference being minor track alterations made to have the ride fit into its location. I had the opportunity of riding White Lightning before this one, and while I've always thought it was a fun coaster, it did feel like it was a little on the rougher side. I'm glad to report that Heidi the Ride was completely the opposite. Maybe that has to do with the fact that it opened recently in 2017, but it's still a perfectly smooth GCI, very comfortable. Combine that with the quick pops of airtime and swooping turns, and it was great getting to experience all the White Lightning's elements without being shaken around. This was a solid coaster and definitely a good 3rd place coaster for the park. Number 2 is Anubis the Ride. Until last year, Anubis had always been the park's most intense roller coaster. Where everything else in the park was designated for younger guests, teenagers and adults would be able to enjoy this fantastic Earthslower launch coaster. You begin with a super punchy LSM launch, accelerating riders to 56 miles per hour in approximately 2 seconds. This is a terrific start to the coaster and possibly the best launch in the entire park. You then shoot up a 111-foot tall top hat, giving some solid airtime. Then the rest of the layout is almost exactly identical to Daredevil Dive at Six Flags Over Georgia. I always tell people who have ridden that ride to take out the vertical lift hill and drop and replace it with a launch and a top hat. That's pretty much the only difference between the 2 rides. Well, that and Anubis also has some pretty annoying over-the-shoulder restraints that only really bother me because Daredevil Dive has incredibly comfortable lap bars. That's why in the end these coasters pretty much even out in my rankings, even though Anubis has the far superior beginning. The layout on this coaster is compact and awesome, and a truly fantastic compliment to number 1 on this list, which really should not come as any surprise whatsoever. Of course, it's Tomorrowland's Ride to Happiness. Plopsaland, a small family park that most enthusiasts probably hadn't heard of before, shocked the world when they announced this coaster. It would be only the second ever mock extreme spinner after Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City, and although that ride is still excellent, this one ups the thrill factor by 1,000 times. Everything about the Ride to Happiness blew me away, starting with the layout. Every element on this ride delivered, from the RMC level ejector airtime to the many inversions, all while you're spinning round and round. But as nauseating as that sounds, don't let it scare you away from riding this thing. Ride to Happiness uses a magnetic system that controls the speed of the train's rotations so that it isn't inherently dizzying like Tornado at Bakken, for example. Instead, its sole purpose is to point you in crazy directions so that you can experience elements and inversions that you likely have never felt going backwards or sideways or while spinning. As if the layout wasn't enough, this coaster was decked out with impressive theming and the coolest bonus feature ever, which is the onboard audio done exclusively by Tomorrowland. This was a partnership project between Plopsaland and the largest dance music festival in the world that is held not too far away in the same country, Belgium. Trust me, they know what they're doing when it comes to music, so when the park asked them to implement an EDM music that increases in tempo to the ride's elements, they were probably really stoked. The execution of everything together really could not have been done better in my opinion, which is why since I've ridden this coaster, I have declared it my very favorite I've ever ridden in my entire life. This is with 640 ridden roller coasters across America, Mexico, Canada, and throughout Europe. I firmly believe that Ride to Happiness is contending to be the best coaster ever built in the world. I was so blown away by the ride and still cannot believe that this park of all places was capable of building something like it. I genuinely hope Ride to Happiness was a worthy investment for the park and that they continue to expand with bigger roller coasters in the future. Plopsaland is a park that has a lot of potential for future growth, and I think there's a chance that this was the very start of that. But let me know what you think down in the comments. What do you think of this park's roller coasters? How would you rank them up? How would you order them differently? Also, feel free to give me a like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out and encourages more videos like this one to come in the future. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.